because they'll be on the screen, so that's kind of the tricky part. Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Courtney O'Keefe, Director of Communications with the Sheriff's Office. Is everyone's sound working? Good? Okay, and there are news releases printed out on the table if you guys do want a copy of those. So we'll go ahead and get started with Snohomish County Sheriff Adam Fortney.
Thank you guys for being here. We appreciate everybody taking the time. This is a big day. It's important. We are here to announce a break in a 1987 homicide cold case. In June of 1994, a body was recovered in Lake Stickney. For more than 26 years, those remains have been unidentified John Doe. After years of investigating and new advancements in DNA technology, we have finally identified the remains as Rodney Peter Johnson, born in 1962. Rodney was last seen by his family members sometime around late 1987 or early 1988 after he left on a camping trip. Detectives believe Rodney was around 25 years old when he was killed. Successful identification of Rodney was established using forensic-grade genome sequencing and genealogy. With us today is Investigator Jane Jorgensen and Investigations Assistant Nicole Doherty with the Medical Examiner's Office, and with us via Zoom is our lead cold case detective Jim Scharf and Chief Executive Officer David Middleman with Othram. They each played a very important role in identifying Rodney and will provide further details on their involvement. Although we have identified Rodney's remains, this investigation still has more work to be done, and we are asking for the community's help. Before I turn over the podium, I have to thank all the detectives, medical investigators, as well as our partners with Othram who worked endlessly and never gave up on identifying and seeking justice for Rodney. I will now turn it over to Detective Jim Scharf, who will share more about the active homicide investigation.
Thank you, Sheriff. On June 11th, 1994, Rodney's body was found floating in Lake Stickney. The Snohomish County Medical Examiner determined that he had a gunshot wound to his head, and his body was covered in a soap-like substance called adipocere, indicating his body was likely underwater for many years. We believe Rodney was killed in or around 1987 or early 1988 when he was last seen. We believe his body was weighted down under the water in Lake Stickney until it surfaced in 1994. We're asking for anyone to come forward with information, specifically anyone who knew Rodney or knew of his activities in or around the mid to late 1980s. He would have been about 25 years old at the time. Anyone who has information regarding Rodney or his last known whereabouts, or anyone with information regarding the murder of Rodney Johnson. We believe that Rodney lived on Northwest 60th in Ballard and worked at the Golden Dragon Chinese restaurant on 17th Avenue around the time of the killing. We believe someone out there knows something. Maybe you were too afraid to come forward before, but now's your chance. The smallest bit of details could lead to identifying Rodney's killer. So if you have any information at all, please call the Sheriff's Office tip line at 425-388-3845. Thank you, and I would now turn the mic over to Nicole Doherty with the Snohomish County Medical Examiner's Office. Thank you, Nicole, for being here to explain the crucial involvement of your office in identifying Rodney's remains.
Thanks, Jim. I'm Nicole Doherty from the Snohomish County Medical Examiner's Office. Shortly after the decedent was recovered from the lake, Dr. Eric Kiesel opined the decedent to be a white male around 5'11". Dr. Gary Bell, the Washington State forensic odontologist, performed a formal post-mortem dental exam on the decedent. He came to be known as the Lake Stickney Doe. The case was added to the FBI's National Crime Information Center, NCIC, on June 15, 1994. Detectives, including Detective Greg Rinta, combed through hundreds of missing persons reports, but none were a match to Lake Stickney Doe. In October 1994, the skull was released to Detective Robert Palmer. He and 4 other students in a forensic reconstructive sketch course each drew unique sketches of what the decedent may have looked like. In November 1994, Dr. William Haglund examined the bones. He estimated Lake Stickney Doe to have been 25 to 35 years old when he died, about 5'6" to 5'10", mostly Caucasian but possibly mixed race, and to be about 150 pounds. In July 2000, the case was uploaded to the Doe Network website. Detective Joseph Ward learned about DNA analysis being performed at the University of North Texas, where he sent a sample of the decedent's DNA in 2006. The newly analyzed DNA sample was uploaded to the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, CODIS. In February 2008, there was a renewed push by Detective James Sharf with the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office cold case team to identify all unidentified decedents in Snohomish County. This included Lake Stickney Doe. In May 2008, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office cold case team partnered with Crime Stoppers of Puget Sound to release a playing card deck containing unsolved homicide cases in Snohomish County. Lake Stickney Doe's information, along with a forensic reconstructive sketch done by Detective Robert Palmer, was included as the 7 of hearts. In June 2008, the case was uploaded to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System, NamUs. DNA from CODIS was uploaded to NamUs in 2012. Dental information was uploaded in 2013. In April 2016, forensic artist Natalie Murray examined the skeletal remains. She included several sketches to show different possible characteristics based on traits seen on the skull. In August 2008, the heel bone, kneecap, femur, and several teeth were sent to DNA Solutions in Oklahoma for DNA extraction. DNA Solutions extracted 3 very small quantities of highly degraded DNA. The 3 samples extracted by DNA Solutions were sent to Othram Labs in Texas for further analysis and to obtain a file to be uploaded to GEDmatch, a public genealogy website. In May 2020, Othram successfully analyzed one extremely small and highly degraded DNA sample obtained from a tooth. Despite the DNA being incredibly small and degraded, Othram was able to sequence the DNA and upload a GEDmatch file. Upon uploading the DNA to GEDmatch, there was a match to a first cousin. Investigators were then able to build a possible family tree. They contacted that first cousin, who recalled 2 family members that she hadn't heard from in many years. Detective James Sharf recognized one of these family members that she'd mentioned as being a missing person, Rodney Johnson. Detective Sharf reviewed the missing person report for Rodney. In it, he found the name of the decedent's mother, father, and sister. All 3 were also in the family tree that was built based on the GEDmatch upload. To confirm the identity, family reference DNA samples were obtained and compared to the decedent. There were many, many people involved in identifying Rodney. More details about everyone involved can be found on our website. We're especially grateful for the help from Rodney's family, Othram, and GEDmatch. And although we're happy to have given Rodney his identity back, most of all, we offer our sincere condolences to Rodney's family. I'll now introduce Othram's Chief Executive Officer, David Middleman, with us via Zoom.
Hi, I'm David Middleman from Othram, and I'm appreciative to be here. The case, as you guys heard, was very challenging. There was, because of the age of the remains and where they were found and how long they had been where they had been, there was very little DNA left to work with. It was contaminated by a lot of non-human, probably bacterial material, and there was a very high amount of degradation. We worked with Jim and Jane from the medical examiner's office to build a profile from only 1/5 of a nanogram, so a very, very small quantity of usable human DNA that was remaining. And we're very fortunate that we were able to build that profile, and then through some really great sleuthing work on behalf of Jim and the rest of his team to basically match that to a missing person. Interestingly enough, and I'm sure there'll be more news in the release, that missing person was reported missing quite a number of years prior to the discovery of the body. And so I think that this is a great example where genetic genealogy and advanced DNA testing was able to connect facts that were already available in the case, but may have not connected on their own just because of differences in dates and everything else. And so just very appreciative to be able to help out even in the smallest way to insert a little bit of DNA data to help tie together this case, and echoing the thoughts for the family that you had mentioned, and the hope that we can bring the person responsible to justice.
So thank you, David, and thank you for your incredible work, your DNA work on this case. It's greatly appreciated. I'd like to take just a moment to introduce some of Rodney Johnson, or one of Rodney Johnson's family members, Marianne Lambert. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Rodney's sister, Marianne. I would like to thank my cousin, Ellie, for her DNA, which helped us find Rodney. Also to thank all the detectives, the medical examiners, and for all their hard work. We are asking the public, if they know something, to say something. Our family wants closure and justice for whoever did this to Rodney. His life was snuffed out. He didn't get a chance to live long, or get married, or have children, or be with his family. Please help our family with any information or tips that you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne, very much. Great job. So, we're very grateful that you both are here today. Very emotional, as you can see how impactful that statement is from the family. That's why this work is so important. It's many years later than we would have hoped, but we are very glad we're finally able to identify Rodney and properly return him to his family. Our work on this case isn't over yet. We are determined to find out who killed Rodney and get justice for him and his family. We will take questions. Just a quick reminder, it is an active investigation and we may not be able to answer them all, but we will do what we can.
Can you walk through the circumstances of when this happened?
Detective
the
Sharp?
original case?
If it's real specific to the case, I'm going to have Detective Sharp answer.
I couldn't hear the question.
Sorry, can you just walk through the beginnings of the case for us and tell us about when he was discovered?
Well, I understand the question is the beginning of the case. There were fishermen fishing in Lake Stickney who found Rodney's body floating there and notified the sheriff's office and the medical examiner's office. My old partner, Detective Joe Ward, waded out into the lake and assisted in recovering the body. And it was taken to the morgue where an autopsy was done by Dr. Eric Kiesel, and he determined that the body had been in there for a long period of time due to the adipocere, and that Rodney had been shot in the head. So at that point, we began a homicide investigation. Detective Greg Renta was the lead detective handling the case, and he worked thousands of hours over years trying to identify Rodney, and several people have been ruled out with DNA in the past. We weren't able to identify him until this new tool of genetic genealogy that's come forward recently and has been saving grace for a lot of cases. So we're really fortunate that we have the technology now that we have, and that we can identify someone through such a small, minuscule amount of DNA. It's amazing.
Is there anything specific that you're looking for from the public, for tips, for clues?
Well, we've talked to some relatives. The person that Rodney was living with was a cousin, and the last thing that she recalls is that he was going on a camping trip. So we're hoping that we can find the people that might have been with him on the camping trip to see if something happened there, or what other activities he was involved in in late 1987 or early 1988 when he disappeared.
No specific descriptions of vehicles or intersections or areas to be kind of on the alert for, just the general area?
All we know is that he was living up in Ballard in North Seattle, and he might have been camping in Darrington area. That's where he was raised in a foster home, so he was familiar with Darrington, but it's hard to say whether he was in Everett, Linwood, Darrington, or where.
Can any of you speak to, is this the first time in Snohomish County that genetic genealogy has been used in this way as opposed to catching a cold case suspect?
No, actually, Jane Jorgensen's been working on several cases at the medical examiner's office, identifying other unidentified human remains. I believe she identified one in Edmonds a year or so ago, and other cases too. It's a tool that we're hoping that we can use to identify 8 more unidentified remains that we have in Snohomish County dating back to the late 1970s.
Detective Sharp, can you walk us through the timeline of when the missing person reports were made and why the sheriff's office didn't kind of zero in on Mr. Johnson sooner than this?
The timeline on
when the missing person reports were made?
There were a couple of missing person reports that came in on this case back in the time period of the early 90s.
Can you describe what a fifth of a nanogram is in layman's terms? Like, how minuscule is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to tell you, like, one way to think about it is if I pluck 20 cells from your body, so 20 cells would be about a fifth of a nanogram. Another way to think about it is if you take one of those recreational DNA tests, you know, the consumer test you might take with a company to learn about your ancestry, you're probably going to have between 750 to 1,000 nanograms. So that's how much comes out of your cheek when you do a consumer test. So we're talking about, instead of almost 1,000 nanograms, 0.2 nanograms, which is like about 20 cells. So you couldn't even see it, it's just a speck.
And I'm curious, this Snohomish County and Detective Sharp, you've worked on many of these cases related to genetic genealogy. We've seen a couple elsewhere in the state, but not nearly as many as Snohomish County is doing. How is Snohomish County able to do that, and why are you so invested in it?
I'll take that one.
Sure.
We're invested in it because it's the right thing to do. We are never going to stop working these cases as long as we have something to follow up on. And this is beyond the elected office of sheriff or who is here. All the credit goes to these detectives and the incredible partnerships we have doing the day-to-day work. This isn't just a job for these folks, these detectives that come to work. They live and breathe this stuff, and it's so impactful to the family members. They spend an incredible amount of time with family, with other investigators. And as long as there's something that we can go on that's valuable, as long as I'm in office, they are going to have my full support. So I can't say that we've changed anything specifically, because this goes back years what the detectives have been working. But as long as I'm here, they're going to have my full support. If I get a call as the sheriff and they're like, hey boss, we got to go to the East Coast to look into something, I'm going to say, good to go, approved. Because you heard the family speak today, you heard Mary Ann speak. Like I said, as long as there is something that we can follow up on and there's value in that, and we have a shot at solving one of these cases for the family members, that is exactly why law enforcement is here.
I don't know if the family members are taking questions. That would be
I'd say no.
No? Okay. Detective Sharp, for you then, what was it like to, or Sheriff Courtney, I'm not sure which of you did it, to be able to contact the family in this case and say you had an answer?
It was Sunday night that I finally was able to put it together to figure out that this had to be Rodney. So Monday morning was, I think, Memorial Day, and I placed a call to Mary Ann Lambert to inform her because she was the reporting person on the missing person report. And she was over in eastern Washington enjoying the holiday. And I think that when I told her that we believed that we found Rodney, she was just absolutely overwhelmed. It was just so heartwarming to find out that she really cared to have these answers. And every time I've worked at a cold case that we've been able to resolve, we've gotten the same kind of response from the families. It's just overwhelming that now they finally have some information to know what happened. And it's just really wonderful to, help them learn, what's going on with the case. It's been really gratifying to help people like that.
Adam, you've had one conviction of murder, one arrest, and now an identification of a John Doe. DNA's, is Pandora's box opening up right now? Are we expecting to see more down the road?
Like I said, as long as there's hope in solving these things, I would say absolutely yes. And I would say, you said Adam specifically. It's not Adam, it's the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. It's the community, it's the family members. We all work together to make this stuff happen. It's not any one person or one agency. I'm very proud to support it as the sheriff, absolutely.
Why do you think so? Not a lot of other agencies in the state are doing this?
No way I could say that.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Is it costly or is it budgetary?
There is cost to everything we do in public safety these days.
Yeah.
Yes, everything. Thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.